Hey, what's going on, guys? You may or may not know the Monster Hunter Stories 2 demo is now live, and as of such, I've played it. Unfortunately, it's not out for PC, so I had to play it on my Nintendo Switch. So what you're seeing right now is 720p Switch Lite recording, but other than that, I've got to say the demo has been a lot of fun. What I wanted to do in today's video is I wanted to do a sort of like a mini review for the demo. We're going to be talking about the overall fidelity and sharpness of the game. We're going to be talking about how what we get in terms of story works into the demo, and then we're also going to be talking about the gameplay and the monsters themselves. Throughout this, we're also going to look at how the game differs or is similar to the original Monster Hunter stories, and overall just get sort of a general idea for what this demo has in store if you have not played it yet, or if you have and want another sort of perspective on it. That said, let's dive right in. Alright, so the Monster Hunter Stories Wings of Ruin demo consists of a few missions, some side quests, a decently sized area to explore, and a handful of monsters to tame. On the graphical side of things, I definitely have to say that it's one of the most visually impressive within the monster taming genre. It's not this crazy, revolutionary, unbeknownst to men type of graphics, but as a spin-off of a game boasting more of a cartoonish take on an otherwise really realistic looking medium, it does a great job with the characters and monsties themselves looking quite clean and sharp. I really do enjoy this art style, far more than I do in most games that do decide to go the cartoonish route. The wilds look absolutely great. The main town has a very Monster Hunter Stories-esque feel to it. Here you can look at the original town from the first game to compare, and overall the game just looks really nice. This is nothing unexpected, as we have seen several trailers and gameplay showcases leading up to this point, but I've got to say, even in 720p on a Switch Lite, the game does look great, with there being no clear noticeable frame rate drops or stutters or pop-in issues at all. I'm just going to come out and say that this is the standard of what monster taming titles should look like on the Nintendo Switch, coming from bigger studios. The game's also got voice acting, whilst a little punny at times, which, I mean, if you haven't played the first one, you might not expect it, but if you have, you'd understand. But in general, it's not too bad, which I usually absolutely hate English dubs for most anime and video games, especially the ones that are more child-friendly. But I was actually surprised that this demo actually portrayed pretty decent dialogue and execution of said dialogue. The overworld looks great and totally fits within its own art style, and one thing I really do appreciate is the attention to detail, specifically when it comes to monster scaling. The large monsters are very large. I mean, look at this guy. He's not playing around, and I really like that. I really like that there's a sense of scale. While I would like to see the monsters doing a little bit more in the overworld to make them feel a little more alive, they still do seem to act natural and give a sense of a world that's truly lived in by these creatures. The battles, which we'll talk more about in a minute, are full of great animations and sequences that make them feel more impactful and alive. The animations are truly on point, and it's clear that a lot of effort went into properly animating each model and sequence, with each monstie having its own unique ability that executes similarly to a limit break of sorts. All in all, the graphics and the way the models flow and are executed are great. I have very little complaints, and honestly, it just feels like a true step up and a natural progression from the 3DS title. If you've played that one, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when looking at this game. Now, onto the gameplay side of things, I can honestly go into depth on every small aspect of the demo because there's a lot, but for the sake of time, I'll stick to the more mainline stuff. But so you know, the game features various missions leading up to the first seemingly really important story point outside of the intro sequence, and during this time, the game gives you sort of like a feel for it, like a tutorial, but it doesn't feel intrusive. All the major cutscenes are skippable, and most NPC dialogue is pretty short and to the point, and even random NPCs will give you actual tips on what you're supposed to do, instead of just random nonsense. Instead of making you do a succession of super boring tasks in order to teach you how to reinvent the wheel, Monster Hunter Stories 2 instead gives you its tutorials by sending you out into the field and teams you up with Kana, an older, much more experienced monster rider, whom sort of will act like your safety net in some situations while you traverse your first mission and a couple after. You'll learn how the combat works, how to obtain more monsters, and stuff to that effect. If you've played Monster Hunter Stories in the past, then you'll be no stranger to the combat system, as it functions nearly identical to the previous installment, which has you deciding between 3 types of attacks in a rock, paper, scissors format, with speed trumping power, power trumping technical, and technical trumping speed. Basically, each monster has a general attack pattern, and you must exploit it by using advantageous attacking methods to win head-to-heads, which eventually will build up your kinship meter, allowing you to ride your monsters in combat and decimate your foes with your kinship abilities or just through brute strength. The way this all works is that you fight alongside your monstie as opposed to it fighting for you. You have stats just like your monster and can equip different weapons weapons and armor to suit your playstyle. An example of differing playstyles, there is a club weapon, which allows the player to break through shields and shells using blunt force damage. And then there's something like a sword, or even have a bow and arrow. There's lots of different things you can use to sort of focus on different aspects of the combat system. Pretty much everything on the gameplay side of things mirrors the original, with better UI, albeit kind of small, smoother gameplay, and overall just the same mechanics but better. Looting feels faster, as does jumping, and even running off with wild eggs. Speaking of eggs, the mechanic in which you obtain monsters is exactly the same. You'll find randomly generated monster dens, which will feature some enemies and a small labyrinth for you to travel through, ultimately leading to a nest where you can either stealth grab the egg from a guardian parent or fight against them. There's also cases where there's no parents as well.
Dad went off to get cigarettes, I see.
Your companion character will give you an indication of the rarity of the egg by mentioning its smell and its weight, and then you can choose to leave or pick up another egg and do that over and over again until they run out. Again, nothing new in this circumstance. If you're a player of the first, I honestly think that is a bonus. The first game had solid mechanics, and instead of trying to reinvent the wheel like I see a lot of games doing, adding unnecessary mechanics or changing the very foundation of how the game works itself, Monster Hunter Stories 2 prides itself on its foundation, and honestly, its core gameplay is a recipe for long-term success in my opinion. Future generations of Monster Hunter Stories games could have new weapons, new monsties. They could literally just build on the systems they have. I should have probably mentioned this here too, but every monster you can obtain, you can also ride, and each will have a different overworld ability, though some do overlap, but it's still quite nice. For example, Velociodrum can jump, while Yankutku can search for nearby items, and I apologize if I pronounced those incorrectly. The game also features a crafting system reminiscent of the original, where you can basically find various materials in the overworld and craft items which you've obtained recipes for. Over to the character customization, it's honestly really good, especially for a monster taming game, with the character colors in pretty much every aspect giving you the option of using a full gradient to perfectly customize the colors to your liking, whether it be skin tone, clothes, armor, or even eye color. In fact, you can have 2 different eye colors, hence the adult Sasuke thing I got going on with this kid. Also, on a side note, there are actual longer hairstyles for males, which is definitely quite nice, because a lot of games might give you the option to put the female haircut on a male, but they won't actually give you like a long hair male styled option. So I appreciate that as well. Again, while the customization is not the most revolutionary thing in the world, it definitely holds other AAA monster taming titles to a higher standard. As far as the monsties themselves go, there are a lot of familiar faces from the original and of course from Monster Hunter in general, but overall I really like the designs of these guys. They're much less cutesy and more fierce, featuring dinos, boars, you got dragons, etc. These are the types of monsters that are personally up my alley because they give off that intimidating vibe, and I'm a little tired of all the cutesy stuff. I honestly just want some ferocious meat eaters on my team, alright? Since the demo is limited, I'm also going to limit how much I discuss the game's features and monsties, as of course I will have a full review of the game planned once I get my hands on it. Monster Hunter Stories 2 is looking to be quite the interesting project, and one of my most anticipated ones at that. We definitely need more big budget monster taming titles if the genre is going to push itself further to the forefront, and I think high quality games like this will do just that. If you have played the demo yourself, definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you are a fan of Monster Hunter Stories or just monster taming games in general, definitely feel free to subscribe. You can also check out my Twitch, Twitter, and Patreon, as well as my Discord. All links in the description, guys. I'll see you next time. Peace.